All right, so I went full corny this morning, and I have an I-CAN statement for you all, because why not? So our I-CAN is I can effectively use Jamboard and Google Slides in my virtual classroom. I'm going to start with Jamboard, and then we'll transition over to Google Slides in a moment. Now, before I get started, I'm going to give you guys kind of the same spiel that I give my students. So Jamboard can be used for direct instruction. However, I can also make it so that you guys can edit the Jamboard as well. So in a moment in the chat, I'm going to send the link to the Jamboard. All I ask is that when I send you the link that you edit anything that I ask you to edit, and you don't edit anything that I don't ask you to edit. Also, that you do not delete or write over other people's work on the Jamboard. Sound good? All right, so I'm going to send the link in the chat here. And then I'll give everybody a moment to open that up. Yes, Kirkowitz.
Honestly, I just wanted to see what the button did.
Fair enough. All right, it looks like we are all joining. Yes, thank you. Yeah, as Bree mentioned, don't use the undo button on your Jamboard. When you write something, you don't like it, you have to actually erase it or go through and like delete the text, because everybody is adding to it, so it might undo somebody else's work. Thank you for that addition. All right, so here we go. To get us started, I want to know, how well do you guys know Jamboard? So I have kind of this 3-section T-chart up on the screen for everyone. And I want you all to take a moment and add a sticky note and place it in the correct category. You do not have to put your name on the sticky note. You can keep it anonymous. To add a sticky note, you're going to go over to the left-hand side where all the tools are, and there's a box with the 2 little lines in it. You can click on that. You can change the color of your sticky note, and you can type whatever you want in there and add it to the board. All right, we got a little bit of a divide going on. It looks like some of us are feeling pretty confident in our skills, and some of us have probably not used this tool before. So, yeah, we've used it a few times. However, don't think you know too much. All right, fair enough. And I by no means am a master of Jamboard. Literally, I was looking for a tool to do what I needed to do this year in this weird virtual setting. So I'm just going to share with you guys what I have figured out through the last, 11 weeks of school here. All right. So thank you all for adding to this, to our T-chart. I'm going to start with some of these people on our left-hand side just to get the basics down. And then hopefully by the end, I'll get to some of you people that are trying to get challenged a little bit here. All right, here we go. So very, very basic. In order to actually create a Jamboard, you can create one in your Drive just like any other document, slide, form, whatever. All you have to do is in your Drive, click New, and then you'll go down to where it says More and click that. And then once you click More, then it will pop up. You'll have to scroll down a little bit, and you're looking for that orange icon that says Jamboard. All right. And this can be sorted the same as you would slides or documents. So you can put them into folders. You can make copies of them. You can, now in Google Drive, you can add shortcuts to different folders, all sorts of things. But this is how we actually create one. Any questions so far? Sweet. All right, very basic. Let's talk about some of the pros and cons of Jamboard. So I am a big pro for Jamboard. However, realistically, there are some things that just need a little bit of work. First things first, students are excited to use Jamboard. So it's something a little bit different. They like to be able to, especially if you give them editing rights, they like to be able to add a sticky note or to write on the Jamboard. It allows for collaboration, so students can work together. You can help out the students. It's just a great tool to get people working and talking with each other, even in a virtual setting. You can see the student participation. Now, here is where it's a little bit tricky because as far as I am aware, there is not an activity history report. So I cannot see specifically what each student did. However, if I'm looking at those slides, you can see the little Google icons pop up, and those will show you who is doing what or who is writing what. You can write on the screen in real time, and this was a biggie for me. And as a math teacher, I was trying to figure out, how am I going to show my students how to do these multi-step equations? And this was kind of the answer to my problem, at least as far as what I'm concerned right now. So that was a big one for me. I'm sure that it would help in sciences or English or whatever you're in as well. There are a lot of tools to write with, and we'll talk about those in a moment. The other big one as a math teacher is that there are different backgrounds. So if I go up to the back where it says set background in a Jamboard, you can choose to use graph paper, you can choose to use lined paper, you can choose to use this dot thing, or you could, now it's gonna erase my words for a moment because it's gonna be dark. You could choose to use a color. Mostly I was excited, again, as a math teacher about the graph paper because graphing in a virtual setting was one of my biggest conceptual fears here. I wasn't sure how that was gonna work. So that was a big win for me. And then lastly, you can download as a PDF with annotation. So at the end of your Google Meet, if you guys have taken notes or you want to record student data, you can download this. And the way you'll do that is you'll go up to these three dots and you can click download as PDF, and it will download the entire Jamboard for you. Okay, so with any pros, there are also cons, and I've just come up with a few of them. One of the big ones for me was that it limits 20 frames per jam. So if you have a large class, I have had to create multiple jams for one class because I had like 34 kids in one class period. So keep that in mind. If you have a small class, no worries. Or depending on how you're using it, you might even not need to meet that 20 frame limit. Students can edit any frame, and I kind of gave you guys the shortened spiel of what I would give my students at the start of class, but I think the big thing is that if you hit with students, I'm trusting you with this, I expect you to be responsible with the tools. Most of the time they step up. Honestly, I have only had one issue with Jamboard where another student scribbled over somebody else's work. And for it to go 11 weeks and only have that one issue, I will count that as a win. Yes, thank you, Kirkwitz. You can also set it so students can only view. So this does not have to be a tool where everybody can edit all the time. If you want to change that, so if we go to share, I have it set so anyone on the internet with this link can edit. However, if you wanted to change that, I could change you all right now from editors to simply viewers. And I have done that quite a bit when we're just taking notes for direct instruction. And in that way, only I would be the one that could write on the Jamboard. Everybody else could watch, could ask questions, but they can't directly edit the document. All right. Oh, what, did I change it back? I forgot. No, we're good. Okay. These are kind of small things. It has limited fonts and colors. It really only has one font. You can make it bigger or smaller, depending on what you want. And the colors were pretty limited. You have this. So if you're big into making things pretty, it's not going to be as pretty as you could make a slide, but not a big deal in my world. So, and then the last thing, that I do have a touch screen, so it has been extremely helpful to me. It would, I think, work best with a touch screen, but you don't need it to use this tool. Stickney, did you have a question, or are you just practicing the button?
It was an oops.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so actually, Emily, you said, do students come back to study for tests? Yeah, so I post the links to all my Jamboards in my week at a glance. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, sometimes I like to creep on students because why not? So when I'm creeping in Bloxy on students, I have seen them pull up the Jamboards as they're looking through and doing a homework assignment. So that is pretty cool to see. Oh, you already had commented on it, Bree. Jeez. All right, here we go. On to the next frame. So I want you guys to take a moment and try out some of these tools. We already tried the sticky notes, but there are plenty of other ones. On the left-hand side, you got the pen or the pencil. You have an eraser, the cursor, sticky note. You can add an image. You can add a shape, text, or a laser pointer. And then I kind of already talked about these backgrounds as well, but you can also change background. So I'll give everybody just a minute to kind of play around with the tools, and then this would be a good time if you have questions about the tools to ask me. So you can edit this frame. If you feel pretty good with them, you don't need to, but I just thought it would be a good opportunity to ask questions about them if you need it. Cool dog. I like it. As some of you might be noticing, it is a little tricky to write with a touchpad. So I'll talk about this in a little bit, but one of the things, I think Kirkowitz started doing this, if you have, if you can open it on your cell phone even, if you don't have a tablet or an iPad, that might help if you're trying to write directly on the Jamboard. Is anybody encountering any issues? I love this, with our tools? All right, awesome. It looks like you guys are pros here. So let's move on to bigger and better things. Okay. So classroom ideas, ways that you could use Jamboard. Now, obviously, you can pull it up and I could just write on it as notes, and I do that quite frequently. However, there are other ways to do it. So you could assign each student a frame with their name on it. And this is where, if you had a larger class, you might need to make multiple Jamboards. So that is something that the students like. They have to just scroll through, find their name, and then they know that they can edit that frame, but you do have to be aware of that limit. Ask specific students to edit a frame. So maybe you throw the link in the chat and you say, Jasmine and Tyler, I want you to answer question number 1. Something along those lines. Or you give everybody the link and then you just specify, I'm gonna ask specific students at certain times to edit these frames. I tried this one yesterday and it was actually pretty fun. If you assign students certain jobs, so maybe some of those students that don't participate as much as you would like or get easily distracted, you can say, hey, today you're gonna be my laser pointer, and they'll just circle anything that I say, ooh, this is really important. Or you're gonna circle all my answers today in my slides, and they get editing rights and then they can just circle the answers. So I had just tried that yesterday and it seemed to work pretty well. I tried it with one of the students and they had a fun time with it. So, and they were focused the whole time. So T-charts for voting, you guys tried that out earlier in the presentation. Venn diagrams, I had not tried that one yet, but I saw this online and I thought that it was a pretty cool, idea to do a Venn diagram on here. And you could do that with the shapes over here. You could add your couple circles and then add your sticky notes or your text. Error analysis. This is one that I did with my APCalc and it seemed to go over very well. However, you could do it with just about any subject area. I'll show you again an example of that in a moment. And you can also make a copy for each student in Google Classroom. So just like slides or a document, if you assign this as a homework assignment, you can make a copy for everybody, and then they can write on their Jamboard and submit it as an answer to you. And then the last thing, and I had already talked about this, was you can save and post in-class notes. So I personally don't download the PDFs. I just literally keep the links for the Jam and link in the Jamboard to my week at a glance. However, if you, and the students, I change the rights so nobody can edit when I do link those. However, if you wanted to, you could also download the PDF and post to that. I'm going to pause right now. What are our questions? Yes, Kirkowitz.
When you make a jam through the because you can do that with the 3 dots in a Google Meet, like whiteboard, open up a jam.
Yeah.
Is that give everyone on the Meet editing rights, or is it shared, like view only?
I am not going to lie to you. I actually create my jams ahead of time. So I have not used the jam feature in Google Meet, which I know is like a cardinal sin, but I believe that everybody can edit it. And if you want to stay, we can kind of test that theory at the end here.
We can try it too with math if we want it to.
Yeah. What I do with, if we're doing a tutoring session, I have a specific tutoring jam that I use, and it's just a blank one. And then I bring that up and I clear the frames at the end of every tutoring session. So that's what works for me. All right, so here was the big silver lining for me. Going into this year, I did not want to have to recreate all of my tools and my materials that I had already made. So what I did, I looked for something that would allow me to use what I already had. First thing, like I've said a couple times, using the touch screen has helped me because in math, it is nice to be able to write those equations and solve them in real time. Again, however, you can use this without writing on it. You can add text, you can add sticky notes, etc. The other big one, and this is probably the biggest thing for me, is that all I did was I basically made my Google Slides that I had last year into a Jamboard because I didn't want to have to recreate everything I had already made and spent time on. So there are two ways that you can do that. First is a little bit, I guess, more of a basic way of doing it. You can screenshot or use that snipping tool and add an image to every jam frame. Or I'll show you, if you have the Jamboard app, you can upload Drive content. As of now, I have not seen that available on the actual computer. So I'll start. I'm going to do a live demo. What could go wrong? It's all going to be fine. I'm going to show you guys how you might, and this is how I had started using Jamboard, how you might upload slides into a jam. So I just have one of my old slides for notes that whatever we did this unit. If I wanted to make this into a jam, there is no option to upload these slides directly. So what you can do is you can screenshot or snip each slide. So if I pull up my screenshotting tool, I can screenshot this. And then if I go to, or back to the Jamboard, then I can upload that image to my jam. And kind of click and drag and make it the appropriate size. And there you go. Now you can write on that slide if we wanted to. Now the other way we can do it, this is going to be a little bit of a weird demo because you guys won't be able to see until it's posted. I'm going to do it on my iPad. So let me be really awkward here. On the app, there is a little plus that you don't have on the computer. So if you download the app, then you can press the plus, and then it comes up with options. And you can press the option that says drive content. So if I press drive content, then I can choose a slideshow, and you guys will see that it popped up with like this tiny, tiny little version of my slideshow. Can everybody see that? Okay, if I like double click on that, what it does on my screen now, it opens up all of the slides, and I can scroll through those. Sorry, I know this is kind of a crude instruction here. And then I can pull those slides out, and then they're part of the Jamboard now. And when you pull those slides out, let's see, if I wanted to, I could pull this slide out, and if you kind of hug the side of the screen, of course it's not cooperating with me this morning. That's perfect. If you hug the side of the screen, it will actually bring it to the next frame. So then you can, again, make it as large as you need, and then you can write on the slide itself. So that was my live demo. That was weird. Questions? And that's just so you can use the materials that you already used in the past. All right, so here are some of my examples of ways I've used it in class. These are some notes where literally I went through, did a couple examples for the students. I was able to write down my work. They were able to see it. This is the very basic use of Jamboard. So I can write down what the examples that we're going through in class. However, you could also use it just for vocabulary, and we've done that in math before, and you wouldn't have to necessarily write this in. You could even type this in, use the text box. For the U-tries, before I was comfortable with allowing students to edit jams, what I would do is I would give them about a minute, and then I would call on a person, have them turn on their mic, and they would talk me through how to solve that problem, and I would write down what they said. So if you're not yet comfortable with having students with editing rights, that is a good alternative, and this is one of those examples. I had a couple students walk me through these problems, tell me what they wrote down, and then I just kind of acted as a scribe. Here is another example of my T-chart. So this was APCalc. I had them look at this function and then vote if we wanted to take the derivative of this function, which rule would you use? And you'll notice that they kept it anonymous. I told them they could, but if a student is feeling confident, a lot of times they'll add their name to it. Here was an error analysis. So I wrote out these problems the night before, and I made purposeful mistakes. And then students were allowed to circle, to scribble on, to add sticky notes to try and find those mistakes. And I think that was one of the more successful uses I've had of Jamboard. My APCalc students, they missed one error, but they found all the other ones. Here is another, this is an example of when I assigned everybody a specific frame. So this was Gabrielle's frame that she could edit, and she was supposed to graph this equation, this 5x minus 4 equation. And so she graphed her line, and then I instructed the students that if they finished early, they could go through other people's frames and add sticky notes with either encouraging comments or facts about that student's line. I saw a hand raised. Yeah, Emily.
So I'm just wondering, so like you have sometimes specific students doing their own frames. For the error analysis, was that everybody in APCalc editing one frame, or did you put them in smaller groups, or is that class just so small that it doesn't matter?
I was just going to say, I have 10 students in APCalc, so we were all able to edit that one frame. But I have done it before, and actually that was going to be my next example where I say, okay, these 8 students, I want you to edit this frame, and these 8 students, and I just kind of divide them into groups.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the next frame here, this was an example where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students were assigned to this U-try, and they were supposed to write a parallel equation, and they just added it on a sticky note. So those are a lot of the ways that I've used Jamboard. Are there any questions? Ooh, holy moly, I'm running out of time here. Sorry, guys. All right, so while I am getting my next thing ready, if you guys want to add to the jam, how might you use Jamboard in your classroom? You can use sticky notes, text, or the pen tool, or I guess an image, but that might be weird, to tell me how you might use Jamboard in your classroom. And I will get my next thing ready as you are doing that. And I'm going to cruise through this pretty quickly so I don't keep you guys over. As you guys are finishing up with the Jamboard, I also just linked in my slides presentation because that's the other thing I'm going over very quickly. Ooh, review game. I like that. Cool. You're welcome. I think that Scoobic is trying to track down somebody and ask a question. Kirkowitz, how would you make that work? Yeah.
I did a zombies review game where they had to like quote unquote kill each other and like take away people's lives if they got a question right. So I did it as a pair deck and then like had the question on there and then I reviewed everyone's answers. I was like, oh, all right, this person got it right. So then I made it editable for everyone on the Jamboard so they could just like scribble out someone's X for their life. And it was funny. And then after I was like, we're done, then everyone decided to scribble all over the Jamboard and draw pictures. So just be careful.
Right. All right, awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. Let me go briefly over our Google Slides. This one is much shorter, I promise. So I think for the most part, all of us have used Google Slides in the past. So I'm just going to be focusing on like little tips and tricks. We're going to level up here with our Google Slides knowledge, right? So one of the more obvious ways, if you are a little bit afraid of Pear Deck or creating more of the, or using some of these outside apps, one of the easy ways to make slides interactive is to have active links on the slides. And this is something that I did last year in the shutdown. I kind of just made all my slides for that week. And then if the students were supposed to do something, I would have a picture of that thing that they were supposed to do with an arrow that said click here. And then I would link the whatever the activity was to that object. So if they actually just clicked on the object, it would bring them straight to whatever that is. And I just grabbed a random form that is obviously locked at this point. But you guys hopefully get the idea here. Okay, so that is one of the more basic ways if you're a little bit leery of using like Pear Deck or Nearpod, an easy way to make slides interactive. Some of the other easy activities you can do with slides. So you can do collaborative slides. You could have multiple people working as a group on one slide. Just assign them a slide for like, you could do your whole class and just assign a couple students each slide. You can do sorting or fill in the blank activities. I'll show you an example of that in a moment. And you could also assign each student a slide. At the beginning of the year, I had them all introduce themselves and they were all assigned a slide and they had to add like a picture and their favorite hobbies and blah, blah, blah. But you could use that throughout the year, that same idea. So how to create a sorting or fill in the blank activity. Now the idea behind sorting or fill in the blank is that you need the background to stay, but you need other objects to move on the background. And we want to avoid student editing. That seems to be the big hazard here. So what you can do is you can make whatever background you want. Decorate your slide, put all your Bitmojis, put all your whatever, your decorations. And then what you can do to make this uneditable, you can go File, Download, and then you can download that as an image. I think JPEG is usually what I click, but I circled both because I, in the moment, forgot. So you can click JPEG, and that will download the entire slide as an image to your computer. And then you can upload that image as the background to your slides. And what that does, backgrounds cannot be edited. So whatever you have created as your activity, however you have decorated, that will not be able to be changed. And then you can type words or pictures for an answer bank. And I use the snipping tool or screenshots to do that, to make those little things objects that can move around. And then you can make a copy for each student in Google Classroom. So you can make a copy, they can edit it, and then submit it to you. And this could be used for sorting activities or fill in the blanks, or, you know, if you have diagrams and you need students to drag certain things to diagrams, maybe in science or something, that could be something where this could be utilized. Stop me if I'm moving too fast or if you have questions. So I'm actually going to exit out of the presentation so you guys can see the full screen. This is an example of a sorting activity that I've done in Algebra 1. So this whole thing, the less than, greater than, that whole thing is a background. That is not editable. They cannot change the text to that. You can click on it as much as you want because I downloaded that as an image and uploaded it then as my background. And then for each of these, I used the snipping tool to make these also pictures, so they cannot edit those texts. And then they can drag each one of these to wherever it needs to go. And then what I did is I assigned this as like an IF in Google Classroom, and each student received a copy of this and had to sort the words into the appropriate category. I went pretty quickly through that. So what questions do you guys have on sorting or fill in the blank? I know we're on a time crunch. I appreciate everybody sticking with me.
Just to clarify real quick, so the words that you have there too are also saved images?
Yeah, so I just use the snipping tool. Like if I wanted to make this less than, I just screenshot that. And then you can again upload that picture by inserting an image. So it's a lot of background work, but it's kind of a fun activity. There might be a better way to do it, but that is the way that I have done it in the past. Did that answer your question, Stacy?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. All right, so then let's get back to the presentation. The other thing that I have done, and I've explored a little bit more this year, and I think Fitz has also done this, Scoobic as well, and probably some others, is publishing a slide to make it sort of feel like a website. So if you create a slide, you can make it active. All the links will still be active. It will just automatically kind of go into presentation mode when they click the link. To do that, once you've created a slide, you would go to File and then Publish to the Web. And you can alter these. I've only done it where it's one slide that the students have, and that's kind of how Fitz created like her rounds room and the relaxation studio and all of those things. This is the method that she used. And I'll show you guys an example of how I've used it in my class in a moment. But File, Publish, you publish it. You can change these settings if you need to, and then it will provide you with a link that you can give to your students. So once you have that link, you can add it to Google Classroom. You can send it to them, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, thank you, Kirkwitz. So here is my example of how I used those interactive slides I made because we're not in the classroom and I can't pin the 4.0s to the wall. This year, I made a virtual 4.0 wall of fame, and I actually have to update it for PS2 now. I had a couple 4.0s yesterday. So if you click this link, it's going to take you to my published slide, which is my 4.0 room. And so every time I update this slide, it automatically updates this link. You don't need to republish the slide or anything like that. And you can link in other things. So I linked in, here's the 4.0 wall, a couple people that got our 4.0s. If they want to practice the 4.0 for next unit, I linked in where they can click help, and it will take them to learning modules for the 4.0. These are just ideas. So I also linked in some little Easter eggs. If they click on things, it'll take them to fun little like links or videos as well. So that was my big example of how I used published slides in my classroom. And if you guys have a better idea or another idea, I would love to hear about it. So that brings me to the end. Thank you guys for sticking with me the last couple minutes here. Do you guys have any questions? Thank you.